Welcome back, everybody, to True Talk with TRUMOTION. Thank you for joining us once again. We have to kind of take a step back from our normal episode because someone far smarter than me pointed out that even though they know who we are, nobody else really knows who we are. So today's episode is basically Meet the Hosts. So first off, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mark Diaz Jr. I've been training in martial arts since around 2004, 2005. I honestly can't remember the exact date, but I do remember it was right around that time. I started teaching part-time in 2007, and then I became the first and only instructor in South Jordan with this organization back in 2008. I've been doing it ever since here in South Jordan. I am currently a 4th degree black belt in Shaolin Kempo and working on continuing on getting that master's level degree, but loving what I'm doing right now in terms of training and teaching. And yeah, and then like I said, today's episode is all about meeting the host. So let me turn it over to the other host and let him kind of introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, sir. I'm Stephen Heine. I'm the other host of this awesome show. I've been training for a significantly shorter period than Sensei Mark here. I've been training for 5 years as of this year. And initially, I just started teaching this year. So bringing my 1st degree black belt skills into education and bringing my knowledge from the corporate world and the day job world into developing and ultimately making better people, building them up.
Very good. So first off the bat, Stephen, what made you want to actually get in to the martial arts realm itself?
I've been a warrior child. My parents will attest to that if you can catch them. I've always been having these machinations of, fighting and things like that. And while that seems kind of macabre, it's actually kept me outdoors a lot more, and they appreciated that. But I I signed up for one of the leads, and I got my 30-day free trial, my 30-day intro period. And then what I was able to do from there is I actually had to step away for a few years. I had a couple surgeries, and then somehow I still had that taste for martial arts. Still had that taste, and I came back and never looked back.
That is very true, because I remember it, because he had a great first month, and then normally when people have a really good first month, it's like, hey, let's just keep you going. And when his first month ended, he's like, I've got to stop. And it blew me away, because I was all like, what in the world do you mean you got to stop? And he goes, well, I got to get some surgeries. And it's like, okay, in my mind, you hear it like, oh, those are just kind of, like, all right, well, we can work around those. But no, he truthfully was having some pretty major surgeries at that point, especially on his back. And I personally thought I would never see him again. I really didn't, because most of the time when people stop, they very rarely get started back up. It's very difficult for most people to get started back up. But just like you said, a couple years later, all of a sudden he comes back in through the door, and I was like, holy cow, I remember this guy. And he's like, I'm here to start training. And yeah, I can't get rid of you ever since. So yeah. What do you feel like has been the most challenging thing you've encountered during your training?
There's so many challenging things. I think the shorter list is what is not challenging for me. But the most challenging thing is developing mastery over your body and your mind. I think when I started my martial arts training legitimately, it was a period where I realized how physically inept I was, how much I wanted to improve. And it's been years, and I've improved leaps and bounds in a literal sense.
No, yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement. I feel like the thing that I've found the most challenging, especially when you start getting up into that almost 20-year range, is still keeping that beginner's mentality of like, man, I do know a lot, but I also at the same time, I don't know a lot. And I need to make sure that you never really become too full of yourself in terms of your own skill level and your own mindset, because you never want to be that egotistical person that's just like, oh, I'm a this degree black belt, everybody should bow down to me and this and that. It's like, no, that's not really it at all. So really kind of keeping that, how you felt when you first started training, keeping that lasting throughout the 20-year process. And truthfully, it hasn't been that hard, but they're obviously, just like with everything else, you have your ups and downs, and that definitely can be one of them. And that I believe for me at this point in my training and career is like still keeping it exciting for me, because I know I can keep it exciting for everybody else because they give me their excitement. It's like you just kind of take it and run with it. But keeping that excitement in terms of wanting to learn new information, wanting to learn new techniques, when you're like, oh my gosh, I've already got like 100 of these techniques, I don't want any more. But it's like, no, you need more, because you always want to keep that mind sharp, keep it going, because you know that whole saying, when you stop growing you start dying, I mean, it's very, very true, especially, you know, mentally or physically. So very, very good. What's been the coolest experience you've encountered throughout your training?
The coolest experience that I've encountered is just how everybody, without batting an eye, will show up every Saturday morning, put gloves on, and just beat each other up. I really appreciate sparring. I really appreciate how it's very educational for me and how much I need to learn. It definitely is keeps my ego level and in check, but it's also just a wonderful exercise. It's just such a close exercise that you can share with certain people, and you're able to bring those people in, and you're able to help them along their own journey, and it's just consistently doing that exercise, having that sparring class is just one of the best things.
I do have to say Saturdays are my favorite day at the dojo. One, because the very first class is sparring class, and you really get to see people just kind of release all the tension from the week, kind of, and if anything's bothering them, they just kind of healthily get it out through the act of sparring. And Steven's got this really great move, or I call it the Super Mario punch, where it's almost like he jumps up and punches people in the face and they don't expect it to happen. And every time he punches people, they're like, oh my God. So that always makes me chuckle when I see that. And I automatically hear the like Super Mario sound, like when he jumps and hits people. Whoa. Yeah. I was like, oh, there it is.
Oh shoot, we're not allowed to say that.
Oh yeah. I don't think that's copyrighted. I don't know. We're not big enough yet. But yeah, I would definitely say that is definitely a bright side, the act that you can physically, I guess you could say, get into an altercation without hurting someone, without the fear of them hurting you. And when it's over, you give each other a hug and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. That was great. If you're not in any sort of training and you talk to people about those stories, they look at you like you're crazy. Because I remember telling a story, oh gosh, I can't even remember if it was a belt test or a tiger test, or it was some sort of test where it was like physically grueling. And I think it was a tiger test, because at the end of tiger test, you have to like make it across the dojo through this gauntlet of people and like touch a pad. And I was describing the like effort and chaos that was going on through the act of the end of this test. And then all of a sudden I had to like stop talking and I had to look at the room, and everybody's eyes were wide open and their jaws were open, and they were like, oh my gosh, were you okay? Was everybody okay? And you're just like, yeah, everybody was great, but like everybody was smiling at the test, and they're like, how can that be? It sounds so physically hard. And it's like, well, most physically difficult things end up kind of giving you that joy of being able to know that you just conquered and accomplished it. So yeah, I definitely agree. Saturdays are by far my favorite day in the dojo because it just gets right after it, bright and early. Throw those gloves on and let's get to it. So what do you think has been if you had any kind of funny stories or like stories from like groups of people that you're like, oh my gosh, that one's sticking with me for a while, like any at the retreat or going to an out-of-state tournament?
I don't have any from any events really, but I do just appreciate just the camaraderie that's built since I've been here for 5 years. I've been able to connect with people on many different levels. I think the Moab trip in the recent past was one that an event that I was able to connect with. I went with I saw Sarah there. And we went to a lot of the national parks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you and Sarah ended up going on a bunch of hikes.
Yeah, it was really awesome. It was really awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny because most people want to do that sort of thing, but they don't have anybody to do it with.
Yeah.
So I agree. That's something that I really appreciate about what we've tried to create with TruMotion is things for people to get out and do with other people that they may not do by themselves.
I think that's one of the awesome perks of TruMotion is that there's not just show up, test, show up, tournament. It's let's do these different events that actually broaden the horizon of our students and help them be better prepared for doing things like that in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. Probably one of my funnest memories of probably the past few years. It was, I think it was back in 2009. Me and 4 other instructors at the time. One of them was Jay, Philip, and another guy named Jared. We all piled in a Nissan Versa and drove to Seattle for a tournament. Now, everybody can look up Nissan Versa and see how small the cars are. Well, I'm like 6'2" and a half. Big guy. Philip is about 5'10", 200 pounds. Jay was about 5'10", 200 pounds. And then Jared was like 5'9", normal sized person. So we had all these big people in this tiny car driving to Seattle, and we had to pass through this town in Oregon named Durkee, which that's a story for another day because that was wild. And we ran out of gas basically, and in Oregon you can't pump your own gas, so we had to find a gas station for them to pump our gas. And then just the act of the road trip, going to Seattle, competing in the Seattle tournament. Someone was slightly recovering from a certain type of too much beverages the night before, and then competing in the tournament and taking first and second at the tournament with a hangover. That's always funny to talk about. And then just driving back, the stories that you get from those types of trips and adventures together is always fun. And then I have to think back to, I believe it was 2012. A bunch of us piled in Master Martin's RV, and we all drove down to California to test. So it was when I was testing for my 3rd degree. I believe everybody in the RV was like Nancy, Brandon, Jason, myself, Aaron, and Philip. We all piled in his RV and drove down to California and back. And his RV was wrapped with logos and this and that, so we couldn't open up the windows, and it was so stinking hot. And the only fan was obviously on the driver, so everybody was like hanging up by the driver's seat. And I remember out of nowhere, it started to turn into like cowboy karaoke with like Master Martin and Brandon and Nancy. And yeah, it was like those stories that you develop with the people over the course of time. It's just it's a lot of fun, and it's like things that you tend to take for granted. So I always look to try to find ways of building connections with people around me in those fun manners. So, but besides joining martial arts at kind of a later stage in life, what was it like for you growing up as a kid? Were you an athletic kid? Were you like just staying at home? Were you shy?
I was a mix, definitely a mutt of children. Not totally a athletic kid, not fully committed to being a gamer, but I had a bit of all of that. Actually, I played baseball for 3 years. That was a great time. I grew up mostly here in Utah, but I did move around quite a bit. So that definitely changing schools. In fact, I was homeschooled for quite a bit. Definitely allowed
Really?
me
How
to-
long were you homeschooled for?
Up until the 8th grade.
Really? I was homeschooled up until 4th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Honestly, I loved homeschool.
Yeah.
Like, it was great. You wake up, like, you get your crap done by noon, and then you had the rest of the day to do whatever you wanted.
Well, you're more ambitious than me as a kid. I waited until I had to get it done.
Well, granted, my mom sat down with like my sister and I, and like kind of forced us to do it, but we'd always seem to get done like right around lunchtime or a little bit after.
Yeah.
I loved it. I felt like that's when I learned the most, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, by far.
It was very much a streamlined emphasis, right? There was my mom was also my teacher, and I delivered math every day, English every other day, history every other day, opposite English, and then we did science once a week and language once a week. So it was very nice, very chill. I didn't realize how good I had it until I went into regular
Real
school.
schools sucked, but we won't talk about that.
That's right.
No, that I agree. I loved my time as homeschool. That's actually how I found my favorite NFL team.
Really?
But we were doing an art project where we made with cardboard paper and like colored pencils and stuff like that. We made all the NFL teams' helmets at the time, and then all of a sudden, like, we're like, which one do you like? Which one's your favorite? And then I picked the one that I thought looked the coolest. It had my favorite colors. And I was like, I like that one. And that's been my team ever since. So it's the Philadelphia Eagles, by the way. So I was like, oh, I like that team. That team's my favorite. And that's kind of how I found the team I like to root for now. So I attribute my schooling to like kind of my passion and love of like football right now. So, which is funny because I never got to play football as a kid. And I was always a big kid growing up. Like, to put things in perspective, when I was 15, like, I had like a full goatee and I was 6'1", 180 pounds. Like, I was a big kid. When I played sports, my mom had to bring my birth certificate with us because all the other parents complained because I was so much bigger than all the other kids.
A ringer.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, this kid's too old to be in this area. So for being my size, my dad never let me play football because he thought I would get hurt. You know, I just got hurt in all the other sports. It's okay. So, but were you a like big time reader, or did you like?
Yeah, I read quite often because that was a part of the homework, and then I was a big time Lego kid.
Okay.
I was really into building. I was a creative kid, and I used that to make mostly stick weapons and things like that outside. But
yeah,
also
because
Legos.
everything you had grabbed was either a sword or a gun.
It looked gun shaped.
Yep, exactly. If it was gun shaped, it was a gun. If it was long, it was a sword.
And you give me duct tape for my birthday, and I was the happiest kid ever.
Yeah, I definitely was not necessarily the builder. I was just more of like, I was always getting into things.
Yeah.
I do enjoy stories. I've learned to tolerate reading. Reading was always difficult for me because I have dyslexia. So with that, reading became very much a chore, and it was very, very frustrating growing up, being able to focus through the actual reading and for it to make sense. Like, it took a lot of specialty training and this and that to where I could actually read a sentence. So reading has always been a double-edged sword because I enjoy books and I enjoy the knowledge from reading and this and that. It's just been very difficult as a young kid, and even growing up as an adult. Like, I do have to take my time with it. If I go too fast, I'll start making lots of mistakes and all that stuff. But yeah, so reading's always been a double-edged sword for me. I always like comic books and like looking through the pictures with it. That's why I think I liked comic books a lot. It's because I don't even know if I really read the stories.
Right.
I just flipped through the pictures and was like, oh my gosh, look at this story. It's so cool.
Yep.
So
I like graphic novels. I like my history books. Always had these awesome, vivid artwork, vivid reenactments, reimaginations. It's awesome. I like images and I like text, and I think that sort of has been with me this whole time, because I still read up on manuals and things, how to do things.
yeah, I don't like reading manuals. I'm the typical dude where it's just like, grab it and be like, oh, let's just put it together.
Yep.
Oh crap, I started putting it together backwards. Let's look at the manual now.
I tried that once, and that was our first episode.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That was episode number 1. So, but really what we wanted to kind of get through with this podcast is just another avenue of letting people know who we are, what we're trying to do. Our mission is to build better people. That's what we're all about here at TruMotion. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. Our main vehicle, obviously, is the martial arts. We feel like we can make a huge difference with building better people through the martial arts. And what the world needs now is better people. We just need good, solid people in the world to just help make the world a better place. So, but that's really what we're trying to get through with this podcast. Again, it's going to be an evolving process. We're still working on things. Obviously, the audio from last week we're working on, and we feel like we've gotten a handle on. And obviously letting people know who we are,
Yeah.
as opposed to just jumping right into what it is that we want to try to accomplish.
I thought everybody knew who I was.
Exactly. I thought everybody knew who I was also, but apparently I'm not as popular as I think I am in my own head. But that's okay. But if you have any topics you would like us to talk about, any questions, feel free to email us at, I believe it's Tuesdays TruTalk at Gmail.
TruTalk Tuesdays at gmail.com.
TruTalk Tuesdays at Gmail. Or you can leave comments on the video down below. But again, my name is Mark Diaz Jr. With my co-host Stephen Heinen. Thank you for joining us, and kick it back with us the next Tuesday for some more True Talk. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.